Hello from Los Angeles, California, where it's almost 6 o'clock p.m. This is the, what do we call this? HDG News. That's right. I almost said it, the forbidden word at Charlie Day. Anyway, I want to speak on a controversial topic. Controversial topics are dangerous because controversial means that people have very strong and opposing views. And so if you take one side or the other, there are a lot of people who will hate you or attack you. And that's one reason that most people, including myself, often try to avoid controversial topics. For example, studies show that in elite or some of the better private colleges in the United States, almost everyone is liberal. And of course, I mean, we're talking about ratios of 10 to 1 or more. And it's not the case that people who are liberal or conservative, let's just take on the liberal side, it's not that they have actually carefully studied both sides, like looked at all the evidence. In fact, if you talk to these people, often you'll find they know very little of what they're talking about. They get their facts wrong. They don't know history, and so on. And so it's very much groupthink. It's very much just group behavior as opposed to a community of intelligent people independently coming to thoughtful decisions. That's what it's not. And of course, you find the same thing in the faculty. For example, at the present time in the United States, among professors of psychology, people who teach psychology at the college level, the ratio of liberal to conservative is about 17 to 1. And so when you get these types of ratios, then people who are in a small minority and who will be punished in various ways for disagreeing with the majority, they may lose their job, they may be socially shunned, and they, heavily criticized, shamed, like people call them names. And so what we find is that in situations like that, people simply don't speak, especially when they don't personally have a lot to lose. Like if you are seriously being oppressed and your body is being injured, or you are being denied what you need to live, then yeah, you may fight back. But when it's a university or a college and it's an intellectual issue where you may not be directly personally affected, but still you feel strongly that certain policies, certain attitudes, certain conclusions are not correct, and that they are even negatively impacting things like freedom or prosperity or society in general, then people generally don't speak because they don't want to be attacked. So one case where now, as you know, there's the hashtag Me Too movement. And I should say at the very beginning, so that I'm not attacked, that I have spent most of my life doing all I could say fighting, it's kind of a dramatic word, but doing everything I could in my position to promote the rights of women, at least within the spiritual society in which I live, which is ISKCON. I was probably the first major leader to speak out on this topic. There was a women's conference in Los Angeles many, many years ago. It was the first conference held in ISKCON in which for women and about women and opportunities for women in ISKCON. And I was I think the only major ISKCON leader, GBC, that attended and spoke very strongly on behalf of the women. I'm also very strongly in favor of women gurus in ISKCON, and I've written papers on this, and I've done everything I could to promote women becoming gurus. I think it's, and so on and so forth. So personally, I very strongly support the idea that everyone should have an equal opportunity, that no one should be judged in ISKCON by their body type, and everyone should be encouraged to work according to their ability, both spiritual and material. Having said that, there's the pendulum effect. Pendulum effect means that a motion in one direction will tend to produce an equal and opposite motion in the other direction, as in, you know, a pendulum. And the pendulum effect also, it's not only true in physics, it's also true in history. It's true in psychology. People who tend to go to, let's say, extremes of austerity often then go to extremes of self-indulgence. Or a society or people who have been extremely repressed or mistreated often become extreme on the other side. And of course, if the repression or if the mistreatment is less, the reaction may be less. So, of course, the pendulum effect obviously interacts with individual psychology, but still, that's the general idea. Now, I want to use as an example of what I think is foolish, something that just happened in the United States. There is presently a man named, I think, Brett Kavanaugh, who was nominated by our very intellectual president of the United States. Joking. He was nominated to be a Supreme Court justice, and it's a post which one holds for life. And it's very important because in the United States, the judicial branch of the government has a lot of power to interpret the law. The legislature makes the law, the president enforces the law, and also creates policy, but the judiciary interprets the law by saying that a particular law is constitutional or not, or partially constitutional. And so it was the Supreme Court in America, for example, that legalized abortion. That was not a legislative decision to legalize abortion. It was a judicial decision. Or, for example, the fact that in public schools one cannot teach intelligent design as one possible explanation of the infinite sophistication of biological forms, that was rejected as a public school topic on the grounds that it's a religious idea, which of course it's not. It's a philosophical and mathematical idea. So the courts, as other branches of government in America and other countries, can often be very stupid. But in any case, the point is that the courts are important. So in the case of this nominee, who still has to be voted on by the Senate to be approved to be a Supreme Court justice, there's a lot at stake. In the United States, Supreme Court justices are nominated by the president and they're approved by the Senate. And because there have been conservative presidents, there was George W. Bush and of course Obama, but some presidents just by the death rate, because basically a president only nominates a new Supreme Court justice when an existing justice dies or retires. And they generally only retire when they're too old to do their job. And sometimes they don't retire when they're too old to do their job. Anyway, so it so happens that more justices died or retired during the tenure of conservative presidents. Therefore, these conservative presidents were able to nominate more Supreme Court justices, and that is pushing the court over to the conservative side. Now, one of the big consequences of this, to use the cliche, one of the hot button issues, is abortion, because I think I could say most conservatives are opposed or strongly opposed to abortion, and most liberals think it's a great idea to kill babies. And I have talked about this in another talk, the inconsistencies, the illogic in the typical liberal arguments for abortion. I won't go over that again here. But so therefore the liberals, who are obviously a significant group in this country and in most countries, are doing everything humanly possible to stop this Supreme Court nominee from being approved, especially because in the United States, within less than a month and a half, approximately 6 weeks from now, there will be an election. There will be an election. And it's called midterm election, not for president, but for Congress and other state offices like governorships and so on. And so the Democrats hope that because the President Trump has exhibited such often bizarre behavior, that they can win back at least one House of Congress, perhaps the Senate. If they do win the Senate, then they can block any Supreme Court nominee who is against abortion. And so they need to stop this candidate from being approved by any means, and then hopefully win back the Senate so they can prevent the conservative president from, together with a conservative-controlled Senate, from putting another conservative, probably anti-abortion person on the Supreme Court, which would threaten abortion rights in the United States. So that's what's at stake here. And having said all that, that's all context, but I heard today one senator say something which I thought was so stupid. I mean, politicians, obviously, they often say things that don't make a lot of sense because often their motivations are political and even financial, actually. And so they often say things that aren't really very reasonable, but they say it for political purposes. And so this senator, I won't mention the gender of this person, but this senator said that regarding, this Supreme Court nominee, Kavanaugh, has been accused by two women of having sexually harassed them in high school. In high school, when they were both teenagers, or all three of them were teenagers, and one of the accusers even was drunk at the time that thinks that's what happened. What's interesting here is that, I mean, obviously, since I'm not God, that's something I understand more and more as I get older. Since I'm not God, I have no idea what really happened. I have no idea. Are these, now the Democrats, and both these women are liberals, are extremely motivated to stop this person from being approved to the court. Extremely motivated, highly motivated. And so at least there's some suspicion that perhaps for political motives, because I mean, what wouldn't a person do in defense of liberty? A woman's right over her body, which is the argument, and I've already discussed that many times. So would many people, let's say, tell a white lie in order to defend the liberty of hundreds of millions of women? Yeah, I think many people would do that. That doesn't mean their accusations are false. The accusations may be true. We just don't know. But that's what's interesting here, is that there are people now, including some senators and other people, who are claiming they do know. And you see these demonstrations in the Senate where people, mostly women, are shouting about these accusers that we believe you. And even a United States senator said, I just saw it on today, that, that women who make such accusations should be believed. Now, I thought that was really, really foolish. What I do believe is that women who make accusations should be taken seriously. Their accusations should be taken seriously, and they have a right to a fair and impartial and efficient and prompt investigation. So yes, they absolutely should be taken seriously. Their claims should not be just rejected. They should be given a timely, a prompt investigation, a fair investigation, and all that. Absolutely. Absolutely. But for someone who wasn't there to say, I know, when they obviously don't know. Socrates, after all, said, if the oracle at Delphi is right and I am the wisest person in Athens, it must be in this sense that at least I know what I don't know. Whereas most people don't know what they don't know. And so for people to shout that we believe you, we know you're telling the truth to these women, when they actually have no idea. In other words, what they're saying is, we don't need justice. We don't need evidence. We don't need fair process. We don't need any of the procedures of civilized countries. This is, in a word, what they are calling for. There's actually a word for it in English. It's called vigilantism. And let's see, I have a little dictionary here. Vigilantism is law enforcement undertaken without legal authority by a self-appointed group of people. In other words, we can suspend justice. That a person's life, after a long career of doing good work, you could say, or at least a lot of people think he did good work, that a person's entire life should be ruined. They should be publicly shamed. They should, without anything like a fair process. There's no need for justice. There's no need for evidence. All of the procedures and mechanisms that civilized countries put in place to protect the innocent and to punish the guilty, all that should be thrown away because someone said that someone else did something. And we should believe the accuser. Why? Because we should. Do you have evidence? No. Were you there? No. But we should believe them. So this, and of course I've experienced this in my own life. I was involved as a member of the governing body of ISKCON in a case where I strongly advocated that an accused person simply be given a fair trial. And I said, whatever the result of a fair trial, I accept it. I'm not claiming this person's innocent. I'm not saying the person's guilty. I'm telling the truth. I don't know. I wasn't there. What I do know is that civilized societies should follow universal standards, standards that have been in place since the beginning of civilization for thousands of years, all over in every civilized country in the world. Universal standards that an accused person has a right at self-defense, and the decision of guilt or innocence must be made on the basis of evidence. That's why in America, perhaps in other places, outside many courthouses, you see a statue of the goddess of justice, sort of a pagan goddess. She's blindfolded, and she's holding in her hand a scale to weigh things. And the idea is that justice is impartial, that the goddess of justice, who will make the decision, will not decide on the basis of who the people are, but on the basis of what they did. So if we have a case where a woman accuses a man and the woman should be believed because she's a woman, that is called sexism. That's called sexism. So in the defense of sexism, or I'm sorry, in an effort to remove sexism, people are prepared to ruin someone's life on sexist grounds. The definition of sexism is prejudice, which literally means prejudging. You don't know the facts, and in this case, you don't want to know the facts. You're not even interested in an impartial investigation. You're not even asked, you don't care about that. All you need to know is that the woman is accusing a man, and that's all you need to know. The woman must be right. So that's called prejudging. You judge before you have all the facts. That's the literal meaning of the word prejudice. Stereotyping or discrimination. Now, interesting, the dictionary, it says typically against women on the basis of sex. Now, that's very interesting because even the dictionary now is giving a liberal definition rather than a neutral one. Now, the dictionary is correct in this sense. If it is the case, which it probably is, that the word is most often used for cases where people believe that women are being treated unfairly because they are women, if the word is used more often in that way, then it's justified for the dictionary to say that when it says typically sexism against women, that should be understood to mean that typically that's how the word is most often used, which is true. But whether it's a man accusing a woman, or a man accusing a man, or a woman accusing a woman, or a woman accusing a man, in all cases, I'm actually in favor of being fair. And if you simply say that you support fairness, you will be viciously attacked, even in the Hare Krishna movement, by some people, as I've personally experienced. If you simply say we should do things fairly, so that justice itself, in the minds of some people, is an evil. That there's a higher justice, which is only frustrated, thwarted, by following the actual principles of justice as they have been followed and defended for thousands of years. So if you actually follow the universal principles of justice, then you're against justice. And if you say throw out all these fair procedures, throw out all these constitutional protections, and all we need to know is that a woman accused a man, that's enough information. If you do that, then you're actually defending justice. So we live in very strange times. But then again, probably most times have been strange in the history of the world. And so in my own life and among people I know and care about, I have always tried to encourage or pursue fairness, justice, not prejudice. That's why I have strongly argued in favor of women gurus in ISKCON. And that's why I strongly argue that a man's life should not be ruined without evidence. Without evidence. Just because someone said something. For the same reason. Because in all cases, I support justice. And actually, that's what Krishna says in the Gita. Interestingly, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that samak sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhakting labhate param. I can now, by the miracle of modern technology, actually tell you what verse that is in the Bhagavad Gita. That is 13:28, chapter 13, text 20. No, I take that back. It's not. I knew it wasn't chapter 13. Samataveshu Bhuteshu Madbha. Yes, I knew it wasn't chapter. That does occur there. It's actually 1854, the verse I was thinking of. So I stand corrected by myself. It is 1854 where Krishna says that one who is actually on the spiritual platform, Brahmabhuta, Prasannatma, a soul who has truly been blessed by the Lord. The word prasada means like mercy, and so one who has been blessed with that mercy is prasanna. That's what prasanna means, same as the word prasanna. So one who is actually on the spiritual platform, who has been a soul that has been blessed by the Lord, and who does not lament or hanker, and who is equal, sama, equal, sarveshu bhuteshu, to all creatures, mad bhakting labhate parang, achieves the highest devotion to me. So in other words, even in Bhagavad Gita, you cannot achieve the highest devotion to Krishna unless you are fair. Because the essence of fairness is you treat people equally. Same standards, same rules for everyone, same rules of evidence. So even to be an advanced devotee, you have to be fair. You have to respect the principles of justice. So that's the message today. And thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it that you spend your time, a little bit of your time watching this. And I wish you all very well. Hare Krishna.